What's going on, everybody, and welcome to the Other Side of the Firewall podcast, where we talk about the latest and greatest of cybersecurity news, as well as we highlight those movers and shakers and glass ceiling breakers, those people of color who made it to the other side of the proverbial firewall. My name is Ryan Williams, and as always, I'm joined by Shan Tynes.
What's up? What's up?
And Chris Epcot.
What's going on, everybody?
What's going on? So, welcome to a Tuesday's episode. So, Monday, Tuesday are topics, Wednesday discussion, Thursday's Ask a CSSP. I don't have any in the can right now, but I have some coming up probably mid-month. So, maybe the end of the month, I'll be able to publish them. And then Friday's everything else, movies, books, games, all that cool stuff. But without further ado, I'll give it to Shannon.
All right, everybody. So this article comes from darkreading.com and it's written by Robert Lemos. And the title of this one is Cybersecurity Training in Africa Aims to Bolster Professionals' Ranks. So this is a collaborative effort, right, between the United Nations, Carnegie Mellon University, private organizations, and they're trying to train the next generation of cybersecurity experts, right? And so they went over into the motherland. They went over into Africa, and that's where they're starting to develop, right? Because believe it or not, it's real things going on that warrant the need for cybersecurity, right? So the United Nations Development Program, UNDP, they expanded its Tech for Peace initiative for young adults in West and Central Africa, right? So they're trying to teach cybersecurity skills out there, and they have 500 students in the region, right? So like it's a start, something good, right? But we've talked about this before in the past when it comes to how these big companies are doing it in the States, where they go to these cyber dry areas, I'll call them, right? So that's when they go to the Mississippis, to the Alabamas, right? To the different places in Georgia that may not necessarily be Atlanta, and start investing their money. Well, they're starting to do the same thing here, right? And what they talk about in the article here is not just making them cybersecurity professionals, but kind of make them dual hatted or do multiple things, right? Because they talk about them also being software engineers, right? Which, okay, if you're going to be a software engineer, having a cybersecurity background, that's going to work out well, right? Because we talk about doing the cybersecurity in the beginning and not tacking it on at the end, right? You don't want to develop software and then have to worry about the cybersecurity aspect of it on the back end, right? That's not the way to do business, right? But they also reference in the article, they talk about cybercrime in Africa. And they say, this was crazy. They say Africa saw 23% more cyber attacks compared with the previous year, right? So that's a huge jump from one year to the next, right? So cyber crime in itself is profitable, to those criminals that are out there doing what they do, right? Because they talk about how it causes $3.5 billion in losses every year. But this is a great initiative, right? Like these are the things I like to see. Like branch out. Don't just think that we can't just think that America is the only place where these types of things are needed, right?
Absolutely.
We talk about it. We reference different international efforts when it comes to taking down cyber gangs and things of that nature. So it's not just a U.S. thing, right? It is a Europe thing, right? It is an Australia thing, right? Like it's needed across the board. But this is a good start. I like what I'm seeing here. I hope to see it expand past the 500 students that they're trying to do, right? Because Africa's got a billion people there, right? So it can be better, but it's a good start. I like it. Chris, what's your thoughts on this?
I mean, absolutely. I agree with all your points there, because what this will bring forward is really like a primer for an economic boost for the African economies, right? You mentioned that it's not just America, it's not just the West, and it's not just Asian countries that are, cybersecurity hubs, right? Africa itself needs to, like, with their limited infrastructure, right? I would say that their IT infrastructure obviously isn't as mature as the more developed areas in that sector. So giving that its economic boost, right, would be very advantageous for those economies there too. And also it comes from a standpoint of keeping your best and brightest in this field in Africa, right? A lot of them go and study in the US and stay here, or they go to Europe, they go to Asia, they go to Singapore, they go to Australia, like you said. But this keeps it so that the best and brightest can help stay and provide value and really help grow some of these industries within Africa, which is outstanding, right? From a resources perspective, obviously Africa is very rich in resources, right? They've got resources to really move forward. But it's just really it's some of that training and some of that education that needs to happen specifically on some of these newer technologies. What's interesting as well is that there's a point here about according to PricewaterhouseCoopers, right, 74% of African businesses prioritize cyber risk compared to 57% globally. So it's literally, obviously there's a skill shortage in that regard. because of one, mature practices and infrastructure, to the amount of just like rise in cybercrime. 74% of prioritization of cyber risk is huge, right? Compared to even here, right? So it just shows that there's a growing need for cybersecurity all over, specifically in Africa. And it's just a wonderful initiative to see the Carnegie Mellon and global institutions going and investing in it, right? So I think with this global partnership comes, right, like I think there's going to be a lot more communication between us and Africa in this regard. So it's just a fantastic article. So Ryan, what are your thoughts?
No, absolutely. I think people forget how large Africa is because you talk
Yeah.
about the resources and people and whatever, on top of it, just landmass wise, like the amount of resources that they would still undiscovered, right? So Africa is, I put up a map because like the true size of Africa is never really, the proportions are never really shown on the map because of the bunch of different reasons, right? We have a whole podcast
That's
just
not what
about
this
it.
podcast is for.
But so it's Africa itself is made up of 54 countries, 1.5 billion people. If you take just landmass, you could fit the U.S., China, India, Eastern Europe, Germany, France, Italy, Spain, Portugal, the Netherlands, and a bunch of other smaller countries within this landmass. Is how big that country is. So it is pretty spread out, pretty rural in a lot of places, but you do have major bustling cities in Nairobi, Cairo, Lagos.
South Africa,
Yeah, like
got a lot.
humongous cities as well. But then
And
as you
don't
think of,
forget Egypt is in Africa. Okay, let's not forget that.
right,
Egypt is in.
right, yeah. Like, so you have these major population centers that are, like Chris said, in development and growing, and their infrastructure is growing as well. So now they become targets of opportunity, right? It's like, okay, now that you have connectivity, let's attack it aggressively. So hopefully that they are within this training pipeline, this tech pipeline, they're building a culture that wants to protect the homeland, right? Like, don't get the certs and then jet off to the States necessarily, right? You need people who are going to stay in Africa to better protect and grow and build businesses, right? You can have your next Ram Cyber could grow out of one of these countries, right? I can't, we're not big enough for that, but take a bigger tech company could grow out of one of these African nations, which would be awesome, right? Because then you get that tech pipeline. You have another opportunity for investment, right? So, the U.S. is always going to have those startups that blow up, but what about those that will begin in Africa and then blow up from there? There was a huge cell phone initiative about a decade ago. I think it's still going on, where they're trying to get a cell phone in the hand of every man, woman, and child in Africa, right? Not only would that bridge the tech gap, but it also would build tech literacy. So I know that's still probably going on. So you might not have as robust infrastructure in those rural areas, but they are standing up cell phone towers, right? So you still have people have the ability to get to the World Wide Web to learn anything they want to learn, to build businesses, build websites, things of that nature, sell goods. So there's a lot of opportunity there. So definitely keep an eye out on Africa as it continues to develop and become more robust. I remember me and Chris actually had a boss, an officer who was doing property investment in Africa. So he was like, "Hey, I should jump on this." Like, he wasn't selling to us because that would be illegal, but he was saying, "Hey, if I can do it, you can do it. Like, save your bonuses and save your special duty pay and look at buying some property out here because it's going to blow up."
He was an officer, though. You got to remind him how much more he was getting paid than.
Yeah, right. He's like, yeah, just invest like 10% of your income. You'll be all right. We're enlisted, bro.
Right, right. But that's pretty funny. Yeah, it's true. He's making 10x on it. But I like his spirit, right? He was
Yeah.
looking after us. He was like, you could blow up. And he was very excited about development in Africa. And that was a decade ago, right? So how much have they grown since then? But yeah, I think I'm glad that we found this article because we're always looking at different countries that are starting their initiatives. I remember Microsoft in India and the Pacific, right, with women kind of coming into the cyber workforce and trying to build that out. And then, like Shannon said, we're talking about the pipelines being built in the South, right, to start to gain that talent as they're on HBCU campuses and things of that nature, or in more rural areas to try to build that tech pipeline as well. So it's always good to see. So I'm glad that it is happening. I just hope that they catch up a little bit faster than. I don't think China is attacking them too much because China has a vested interest in Africa. As we remove ourselves, they're kind of filling that void. However, your Irans, your Russias, and so on and so forth, right? They're seeing new target pop up. It's kind of like moths being led to a flame. Like as Africa gets more connected and starts to glow even more, they're like, hey, we need to go over here. There's stuff that's still over here, right? So hopefully that they can start to bridge that gap and kind of speed up before things become too worse.
I'm gonna have
Begin
Jan.
to worsen.
I'm gonna have Jan Jackson in my head all day now because you said the moss to a flame. In my head, it's gonna be Jan Jackson, moss to a
That's
flame.
funny. Yeah. Burned by the fire. Yeah. But definitely continue to check us out throughout the week. So Monday, Tuesday, our topics, Wednesday discussion, Thursdays, Ask a CSSP, Fridays, everything else, movies, books, games, all that cool stuff. Definitely hit up all the websites to go by our name. Get up the actual website, theothersideofthefirewall.com or ramcyber.io. Give me a person at Ry Security as RYRY Security. You can find me pretty much everywhere, but LinkedIn's where I'm most active. And what about you, Chris?
You can find me on LinkedIn under my name, Chris Abacon, last name spelled A Bacon.
There it is. Stay safe. Stay secure.